Happy fall, Krista.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, here we are.
Here we are. It went too fast.
Yeah, I know. The transition from summer to fall is hard, I think, because one, schedules, and we go often from less busy to more busy. But also, it's sad because it means one more summer is done.
I know. And it was a blip for me this year
Mm-hmm.
because we were traveling a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
so we had an amazing trip at the beginning of the summer, which really kicked things off in a great way. But then, because one of my kids does his competitive season during the summer, I was in and out a ton.
Mm-hmm.
So it made it feel like a blip, truly.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just time keeps marching on, marching on. So when we're recording this is my kid's first week of school, which is in August. And I, on Monday, had my first day at the elementary school. 15 years.
Yeah, that is a milestone.
And I am not sad about it. I really am not. Like, I'm sick of driving to that school. I'm sick of standing on the playground waiting for kids to come out of the building at the end of the day. I love my daughter. I love that I get to pick her up. I've made it a priority all this time. And I'm ready to not go there anymore.
Right.
So but I still got a little bit emotional on Monday, thinking more that it represented kind of the closing of that chapter of our lives of little kids. But we've felt that for a while now, because she's 11 going on 14. She's a little bit the youngest sister who keeps up with her older sisters. Anyway, here we are. We're in fall. The energy level is probably turning up for most moms if you still have kids at home and you're on a school schedule of some kind, whether you homeschool or not. If you're changing, switching to school life, it's a new rhythm. And let's talk about how we're going to make it work. We called this series the Busy Mom's Guide, and I think we've given people really practical help in some certain areas and some inspirational help too, to remind ourselves that God is with us in every phase and every moment. And yet we haven't really talked about time, because we all have the same allotment of time in our days. We may not all have the same years on this earth, but as far as a week goes, we all have 7 days in our week. We all have 24 hours in our day. And so if we're talking about being busy, it has to do with how we manage and allot and maybe even look at time. So let's talk about some of the practical ways that we can feel less stressed, even though our responsibilities and our schedule is fuller than it was, say, maybe a month ago. Krista,
you're a good test case because you're in your first week already. So yeah. I would just love to hear what you're doing. How did you make that switch? And now you're in day 3 of the first week of school. So
yay. And I'm so happy about it.
But so what have you done differently, and how did you kickstart that this week?
Well, some things that I've been doing this summer that I'm carrying into, and even last spring that I'm carrying into the fall, that I think are very helpful, is that I am blocking time like I never have before. In that I've always worked off of a to-do list, and I've known, okay, here's my things. But now I'm scheduling those to-dos. I'm putting them on the calendar. And I know you've done this like forever, but I'm slow to the game, people. And I am now doing it. This doesn't always work with my Enneagram 7 friends. Like, I have one friend, I've been trying to schedule something with her, and she's like, yeah, well, we'll see. I'm like, well, guess what? My schedule's going to be full because now I'm scheduling everything. So I have to offer some flexibility in that, but I am blocking out time like crazy.
So are you tell me what your blocks look like.
Yeah. Well, now my kids are getting up earlier, so I love that. I'm an early person anyway. I am making exercise my number one priority in the morning.
Yes.
It really is important to me. It gives me energy to sustain me throughout the day. I am more productive if I take 40 minutes of my morning, dedicate it to exercise. I find time in the day because I'm just energized in a different way. So that is one thing, is I'm really making that a priority. This summer, my younger two kids were motivated by allowance like they have never been before. And so we were big on chores like we've never been before, because it actually worked. Like I had a motivation that was motivating them. So they had their daily things that they had to do, and reading and making their bed and all those things. But this summer, I added what I called add-on chore to the list. And that essentially was mom's wild card. So I could look around the house and say, this is what you need to do. And sometimes it was a big project, and sometimes it was taking out the trash. But the question I asked myself was, how is this going? What can they do that will take something off of my to-do list? Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing is they're now older. They're 11 and 13. So they can actually be helpful. When they were 2 and 4, it wasn't as helpful. So anyway, the add-on chore, I highly recommend it. And so they would get all of their stuff done that they did every day. And then they would say, Mom, what's my add-on chore? And sometimes it was vacuuming the living room. Sometimes it was organizing the toy closet. And there were a few things that I would say, I'll do it with you, but I want your help. Partly because then it motivated me to get it done. Even if I did the majority of the work, They were standing there saying, I want to get this done because I want to move on with my day. Great. Let's do it. Let's get it done. So that has been a big thing. Okay. So speaking of organizing, this last week, transitioning from summer. So we took someone to college. That was a whole thing. We had to get her ready. But then we had this week in between her being gone and us starting school. And truly, talk about New Year's resolutions. For me, this is much more of a new year than January is.
Yeah.
So I said, we are going to get this place in shape. And I used Dana White's method that she talked about on the podcast, Busy Mom's Guide, a few weeks ago, because I'm so distractible. Maybe I have undiagnosed ADHD. I don't know, but I just think everything's interesting. And I'm like, oh, a bird. Oh, look, I'm going through these books. I haven't read this. I think I'm going to read it. Like, I just am so distractible. And so the thought of taking everything out of a closet, I know all of that stuff is going to be on the floor for a month because I cannot touch every item and put it back and have it be organized. So my bedroom closet, for example, I just said, I'm going to do my shoes. I did them. I still had energy. Okay, now I'm going to do my shirts. Okay, now I'm going to do my jewelry. Now I'm going to do this. And then if someone came in and said, Mom, I want lunch, and then lunch turned into going to the pool, and the pool turned into something else, my whole closet wasn't in my bedroom. Anyway, it's proven to work very well for me. And my husband is kind of like, what in the world can we, and even my mom was like, what's gotten into you? I'm like, I don't know, but I am going with it because I don't have it very often. And so that has been part of it too, is just the 10-minute cleanup. Like she says, I put the timer on. My kids respond well to that because they know there actually is an end time. It doesn't always motivate them to work fast though. Because they're like, well, whatever we get done in 10 minutes. So I have to figure out how to motivate.
You throw candy in there.
Yeah.
Whoever gets done first gets a piece of candy. That's about all you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, and then just today I signed up for Morgan Tyree's 10-minute organizing fall challenge.
Oh, awesome.
And it's great because you can start it anytime. So you could start it tomorrow. I'm starting it today. And she gives you 3 areas to work on that you get to choose from, your choice. So whichever of these 3 for the day, for Monday, day 1, works best for you, do that one, set a timer for 10 minutes, and try to pick something that you know you can actually get done in 10 minutes to be successful. Great. I want that help. It works within how I operate, and it feels doable, and it will help me get things done.
Yeah.
So
back to time blocking.
Yes.
So where else are you time blocking?
Well, so for work, for sure. Like I have to-do lists for all the different projects I'm working on. And now I put them on my calendar. Like this, and the mental stress, even though the mental stress goes down when I write it on the to-do list, it goes down even more when I put it on the calendar because I know I'm going to get to that Wednesday. So the fact that it's staring at me on the list on Monday still feels kind of stressful because it's Monday at 8 p.m. and I haven't finished it yet. I actually don't need to worry about that anymore because it's getting done on Wednesday. I know that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we had somebody in January, the Healthy Way. What was her name?
Tanya Dalton.
And she talked about, kind of planning. And she talked a little bit about this, about blocking out time for things. And I said, here's my issue. Historically, here's my issue. I block out the time and then somebody walks in and is homesick from school or needs me to do something for them. And then that time is gone. And she said, then you need to build in more margin. You need to be more realistic. And so I have taken that to heart too, as I have been changing my patterns this year, is I also need to be realistic about when I put things on the calendar. Am I giving myself enough time? And is this the right time to be working on it? Which is a Morgan Tyree principle too. So those are helping me sift through, because now my kids are in school. My time is much more protected than it was this summer. So I can with more confidence say, yes, I will do this and it will get done. Now, someone can still come home from school or whatever happens. But it is nice. It feels like it's been a long time where since I've been able to look at my calendar and say, I really believe that's going to happen in 2 weeks, because for so long we lived with like, maybe that'll happen. Maybe it won't. Yeah. Maybe it'll be canceled. Maybe someone will get COVID. We're done with that way of living for the most part. So it feels so nice.
Yes.
It feels so nice. Like, okay, let's get some stuff done.
What I'm hearing from you is that you found your systems, right? And we all have to do that when it comes to time management. Like you have found these systems that work for you. It may not work for someone else, but they work for you. And that's what matters, is every person has to find their own time management system that actually works, not the ideal that they want to work, but the system that actually works.
Well, and not just for who I am, but also the phase of life of our family. And that the difference between summer and fall is significant for me. And so even within who I am right now, my external circumstances too, of what can I control and what can I not control. And I can control more during the week in September than I can in July.
Yes.
Okay, Krista, what about you? Give us your wisdom on how you look at time as a busy mom. And you think about what are the things that are going to help me not be stressed and get stuff done at the same time.
Well, the one thing I learned that has been really helping me is that every interruption, so basically every time I stop and start doing something else. So let's say that I'm working on a project, I'm writing, or I'm designing, or coaching. I don't do that because you're like right in front of a person, but it's anything I'm doing. And then an email pops up that I'm like, oh, I need to look at that. So what I didn't realize is that every time I give in to that, it actually takes my brain 20 minutes to get back in flow. And so what that means is that now I've just hijacked my brain to go to this other thing.
Yes.
And now to get back into that thing, it takes, just, you know me, I just love the geeking out on the neuroscience stuff, and that it takes literally 20 minutes for my brain to kind of re-enter that project or that work. And it goes back to Cal Newport's Deep Work, that book that has been so helpful for me. but just this idea that our brains are getting to the point with our digital input that our brains don't want to do deep work anymore. And so any little thing that gives us an excuse to pop off of something that's a little bit harder, our brains aren't helping us. Well, we're not helping our brains. I should say that. We're the ones making those decisions. And it's then reinforcing this idea that we never have to do deep work and that it's too hard. And so that, just with that knowledge that, no, I don't want to check that email because I'm really getting some stuff done right now on this project, and it's going to take me 20 minutes to get back into it. And I want to have a brain that can do deep work. Like, just those two concepts really help me because I can then talk myself out of distraction.
Yeah.
So that's been really helpful. And I do try and do that. And it doesn't, there are times where I don't do that, but then I always regret it when I do. So that's, it's kind of setting ourselves up. And one of the ways we can set ourselves up for success, and that I try and do, is the Pomodoro Method. And so what I've been doing lately is doing an app on my phone. So there's two apps that I've tried. One is Focus Keeper, and then the other is Pomodoro Focus. It's like a Pomodoro Focus timer, and they're both timers. And so basically what you do, the Pomodoro Method, and we've talked about it before, but it bears repeating because I think we forget about it and we just forget to do it all the time. So we know it, but we still don't do it. But basically you have a project and you say, okay, I am going to work on this for 25 minutes straight, no interruptions, just straight. And then you set a timer. And then when the timer goes off after 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break. And that's when you allow yourself to quickly check your email or whatever your kind of temptation is, right? Instagram or whatever. You allow yourself 5 minutes, but then after 5 minutes is done. And so that's where this app helps, because it kind of keeps you on the timer, because you can go down the rabbit holes really fast. So then the timer goes off and then you dive back into another 25 minutes. And so that is for me, just that structure is helpful. So that's one way that I've tried to kind of figure out, okay, how do I do this? How do I work without distraction in a way that still kind of works with that idea that we do want to check things periodically.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. It's like the 10-minute cleanup, but 25-minute working.
Yeah. Well, and then also one of the things that Tanya Dalton that we interviewed talks about is how even in our meetings, we can be half there. So especially now that so many meetings are virtual, that we can be having a meeting and we can be kind of doing other things at the same time. And, she talks about how that hijacks our time. Like, why are we doing that? Because if we were totally focused on the meeting, we could do it in half the time that it ends up taking. So, that also, I feel like, has been a helpful concept for me to, again, it goes back to the same thing, just focus. I guess the whole word with time management is focus, whether we're working individually or in a meeting or whatever, just focus so that we actually get stuff done in less time.
Which isn't that interesting, because I feel like women are always told that we're good multitaskers. And we're kind of saying, not really.
Well, and they've actually, the studies have come out that basically says we can do it, but it's not the best way to do it. It's not the best way to get something done, because if we actually focused on one thing at a time, we would be much more efficient and much more effective. And so I do think that's helpful that has been debunked a little bit, that idea of multitasking that we once glorified.
Right. And I will say, it gets back to stage of life and stage of family. Because when you have a baby, you're multitasking all the time. And so we are speaking a little bit to that midlife person who has some space to control their environment a little bit.
For sure.
So that's a joy, right? Like, let's celebrate that
Yeah.
to not feel quite as scattered. And it also might explain why I felt so scattered for a decade
Well,
or
and
more.
even I have to say though, even with young kids, I found different ways to do that. So like even for cleaning, for example, I trade cleaning with another mom, and her kids would come to my house and she clean, and my kids would go to her house. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think there's even ways to do that when your kids are younger. You just have to work harder at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the other thing is coaching. For me, that accountability piece of keeping moving forward, I feel like I could spend, as far as time management goes, I feel like I could spend all of my time just upkeeping on what's already going on, like just maintaining what's happening instead of moving toward bigger vision goals and dreams. And so for me, that's where getting coaching has been helpful, is having someone there who keeps me working toward kind of the bigger goals and dreams that I have, as opposed to just constantly maintaining. Because that's my struggle, is sometimes it just takes all my time to just maintain what's going on.
Yeah, because you're a busy mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that's also a phase of life thing, right? Sometimes maintaining's okay if that's where you are right now, but you're not. You're wanting to work towards those bigger things. And so that helps you. What about coaching? Just having somebody that you have that gives you a homework that you have to answer to, that you're accountable to, or is it more the thinking through things together, or is it both?
It's for sure both. I mean, one, that coaching session helps me to think deeper, to think wider, to actually put that focused attention on that subject. So part of the reason sometimes I don't move forward is just because I haven't organized my thoughts about it. So what coaching does is it helps me clarify and organize my thoughts about that thing. And then I know I'm going to meet with her again. And so by the time I meet with her again, I want to have done what I said I was going to do. So then that accountability piece helps. Again, the coaches aren't, right? They're not punishing you if you don't get it done. But it's just, for me, I work better with accountability. And so I just know that about myself. And so for me, then I know, oh, okay, I'm going to meet with her again in a week. What have I said I was going to do this last time. Have I done it? And if not, I better get it done.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, who doesn't work better with accountability?
I don't know. Not me.
I definitely
Not
do.
me.
I would say, between you and me, you're much more self-motivated than I am. I need external motivation more than you do. So to hear you say that,
oh gosh,
to me feels like, well, if you need accountability, everybody needs accountability.
I just do. Yes. Yeah. And I was actually saying this to my son yesterday. There's certain things I need more accountability for than others. Like, I don't need accountability for someone to tell me to exercise. Like, I don't need to go to a gym and have a coach at a gym. Like, for some reason, I just exercise. That's just what I do. But then there's other things that I do need accountability for. So that's clarifying too, to maybe know I need accountability. I may not need it for this, but I need it for this. And so I'm going to get it for this.
Yes. Which is why I have people come clean my house, because I have to declutter for people to come clean my house.
Yes. And
or why I have people over for dinner, because then I clean my house. It's like a motivation. And I've just embraced it.
Yep.
I'm not going to be embarrassed about that. It's just how I am. Okay. Let's move on to relationships. What helps you? You're very good at this. Make relationships a priority as you are busy, as you're looking at your fall calendar, you're looking at all the things you have to do, you're maintaining all of the things. How do we remember that people are important and relationships are important?
Yeah. I just yesterday, I have a lot of sons home and around right now. So we're doing lots of talking about this kind of stuff, but we intentionally had a meeting with our youngest, and we said, looking at the fall ahead, my husband and I did with him. And we just said, looking at the fall ahead, what would be the best night for family night this year? And really letting him decide, okay, we want this night for family night. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to eat dinner together the rest of the nights. We will hopefully hit a lot of those nights, but what's the night we're really going to set aside to be intentional? And, we usually play games, and I try and make the dinner a little more special on that night, and, all the things we do on family night. So, and even though like he's my last one home, but we still want to be intentional about family night with him, even though it looks differently than it has in years past. And so that's just an example of how I'm trying to still be intentional about relationships in our family, even as we head into fall, and get that rhythm back, even though it's different. And I would say another thing is I really do try and block off one day a week that is specifically for relational time. And in fact, I was just talking to you about that, just that, I try and protect Fridays, because now I realize that is a part of the luxury of being in charge of my own schedule and working from home. Not everybody can do that. But I was even thinking someone could do this with a lunch hour or something where they just designate one lunch hour for people. I'm on this day of the week, I'm going to do this, but I try and do Fridays. And I even sometimes schedule phone calls. So like I'll schedule, if someone lives far away from me, I'll schedule a phone call and I'll take my walk in the morning while I'm talking to that person for an hour. And so that's just trying to build in that intentionality. And sometimes that Friday is going to be with my husband. Like if he has, for some reason, that day off, I'll block it off for him. But if he doesn't, then I try and at least plan something with someone, or just that being intentional about, okay, who is it this week that I really want to connect with?
Yeah, that's great. And I think it gets back to the multitasking versus focused time, that sometimes with kids, multitasking, you can like drive time in the car can be used as relational time. And you turn the radio off, whatever you need to do, you tell them to put their phones away, to have a conversation. But sometimes it is better to just be focused time. And the other day, one of my girls came in my office, and often, they come in my office, I'm sitting at my desk, I'm working at my computer, and they just are asking a quick question. Can I go to the park, or can I, whatever. But sometimes they sit down on the sofa, which is why I have a sofa. It's like a therapist room, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
They don't talk to me like a therapist, but I wish they would, but they don't. But the sitting down happened. So that's my cue that there's something more. And so I closed my computer, and she got on the floor and I got on the floor, and we had a really good conversation. And it was because I had to tell myself, observe what she's doing, follow her lead. She's here to talk. This email will be there in half an hour, but she won't be.
Yes.
So kind of taking those cues and allowing for that focus time. And then I always go back to do what only you can do, as the mantra of making decisions, because often that has to do with relationships. Only I can be that mom in that moment for her. And maybe also I'm the only one who can write that email, but then it's saying the email can wait, but she can't. But often it's a task that I don't really have to do. I may feel obligated to do it, or I want to do it. But if the relationship is staring at me, that's my priority, because only I can be my child's mother. I even think about, like, I had an invitation to something really fun this fall, and we had a family trip planned the same weekend. And I was like, oh, dang. And I was trying to think, is there a way I could, scooch over and do both? And I thought, no, I can't do both well. And my kids are going to get my priority, even though it sounds really fun to go to this other thing. So,
right. Well, and I was thinking about when you were talking that, one of the things I've had to give myself permission for is that, even though I really like being friends with a lot of people and I can be friends with a lot of people, that there's some wisdom in not keeping up with everyone and focusing on, and I think it piggybacks on that concept of do what only you can do, which, normally I kind of see that, especially toward my family. Like no one else can be the mom or the wife to this family. But even in friendships, what friendships am I really focusing on? Because we can get so wide that then we don't really pour into the people that are closest to us. And so who are those people that I want to make sure that I am pouring into on a regular basis? And how do I make time for them first? And then again, not saying that these other people aren't important, but just how are we prioritizing? Because we can't be everything to everyone. And so where's the most life-giving reciprocal relationships that are those tried and true ride or dies in my life? And how am I making sure that I'm tending to those relationships?
Yeah. Well, anything else that you want to cover as we talk about the Busy Mom's Guide and moms are transitioning into fall and into the school year?
I would say, before we get off that topic of relationships, there are things that can help, like the Voxer app. I mean, you and I talk every day on the Voxer app. So I do feel like the Voxer app is really helpful for keeping up communications. I know some people use Marco Polo, and that's a great way. And it really does help. It really does help maintain relationships. And then the other thing I would say is, give yourself permission to just do small things with people. Like instead of dinner, do a campfire or do a just dessert, or just say, come over and play games. We'll just do snacks and games, so just maybe adjust expectations. It doesn't have to be this big thing. It can be a small thing.
Right. I know.
What would you say? Oh, go ahead.
Well, my kids do that all the time. Like they don't feel like they have to have a meal to invite someone over.
Right. No.
They say, just come over for half an hour.
Right.
Yeah.
Why don't we also talk before we go today about stress management as we are heading into fall and just the busy and sometimes the overwhelm. What would you say? What are you thinking about these days for yourself for stress management?
Okay. Well, I'm going to share something that I voxed you about, since we're talking about Voxer, that happened recently to me. I was part of an online discussion, and I will tell you, my mind was blown because moms were talking about microdosing mushrooms on this Facebook group that I'm part of. And it's evidence that I live in a hole, because I was like, what is going on here? But it took me down, the ADHD part of me took me down this rabbit hole of looking at this trend of moms and why moms are choosing this as a coping mechanism, essentially, which, I live in Colorado. It's the first place to have marijuana made legal for recreational use. So people use all kinds of substance, right, for different things. And I don't know really anything about psychedelic mushrooms. I really don't. So I'm not trying to be an expert or to say anything one way or the other. I just was like, whoa. More, it was the underlying questions and issues that were having women turn to this, and having moms, especially. It was a story on Colorado Public Radio about this that was specific to moms. And it's the same questions that moms have been asking and dealing with since I worked at MOPS International almost 20 years ago. Like these questions of, how do I deal with stress? How do I, there are a lot of spiritual questions. How do I have a spiritual experience? How these bigger life things. And it just reminded me more than anything that our stresses, even though the world is changing and we may feel slightly more stressed out than we did a while ago because of what's going on in the greater world, but in general, our stresses are the same. And the big questions of humanity are the same. And I, one, am super curious if anyone listening is into microdosing, because I want to hear your experience. So just message me. But two, I just want to remind people that the stress that you're experiencing now is likely a universal stress of being human, and that the church has given us lots of tools and lots of answers to these larger life questions. And so spiritual practices and things that have been around for a long time are a wonderful way to deal with stress. And these big spiritual questions that maybe you're having for the first time, people have had before. And to explore how the church has answered these questions over centuries could be helpful. So I don't know. I'm looking at the questions people are asking. You know, I say that I'm a kitchen anthropologist. I stand in my kitchen and I try to make sense of the world. And the questions that people are asking is what's intriguing to me. And then where they're going for their answers is also intriguing to me. And I think God can handle all of our questions. And I think he holds all the answers. So I just want to throw that out there, because I'm realizing I maybe live in more of a hole than I knew. And so I just want to just put that out there. So,
well, I do think that there is a trend, even in our young people, of turning to substances or other things rather than God. And I think that is human nature, to be looking all over for what can, I mean, it goes back to, let's go back to Young Life 101, like that God-sized hole that's in our heart that only God can fill. And yet we sure look everywhere, and there's just kind of new tricks that people are using, right? It's like people have been trying new tricks forever, but there's just now new tricks for 2022, 23. And these are some of the new tricks people are using to fill that God-sized hole, but only God can fill it. In fact, I just heard an analogy the other day that I thought was so good. This dad, would always fill up his car when his son was there, and he'd take his son and like to the gasoline and show him what to do. And he was young, he was like 6, 7 or something. And so one day his dad was home, and the son decided he wanted to help his dad. And so he took the garden hose and he filled up the gas tank with water, because thinking, well, it's a hose. And so why wouldn't, this work too? Because it's a hose, just like at the gas station. But of course, then, the car goes out of the driveway, dies on the street, and they have this whole process of having to get the water out of the tank, and what a pain. But that cars are meant to run on gasoline, not water. And our hearts, our souls, we are meant to run on God. And anything else that we try and fill it eventually is going to stop us and need some repair.
Yeah. And I'm talking about everyday stressors and everyday coping mechanisms. Because I think there are, anyway, I just want to clarify that, because that's what I was hearing in this conversation, was it had to do with everyday stress, not with PTSD or depression that's not responding to medication. Because I think in psychiatry, there is some new things happening in there. So I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to everyday mom stress. We get it. We feel it. We know it. And God can meet you in those hard places. I just want to remind you of that. Okay, what do you do? I'm guessing no microdosing. What do you do, Krista, to kind of recenter yourself and to keep your own stress in a manageable place as you are living a busy life?
Well, just like with exercise, I mean, if I don't spend time with God, it only takes a few days before I notice, before other people around me notice. So, that's just an anchor for me, is how am I carving that out? And what does that look like? I've been doing a great study this summer on Joseph by Kelly Minter. And I really love her, and I love her Bible studies. And so I highly encourage any of her studies. They're awesome. I've loved the Joseph one, but just finding different things that motivate me to learn more, go deeper. Sometimes I just read and I just journal about one verse, but then there's other seasons where I'm really wanting to go deeper, and it helps to have some structure like that in a more formal Bible study. So for me, that's huge. Nightly walks with my dog. It's a great way for me to wind down the day. My husband and I usually do it together. So when Eric and I go, it's a great connecting time, and it's a time just to, kind of move my body before winding down for the night. So I love that rhythm. I think it's a really healthy rhythm. And then along with that, just keeping relationships honest and present. And so even with my husband, that just gives us that little connecting point every day. And it's just helpful, just staying current on each other. And then I would say the other thing that I've been learning more about lately is this concept of detachment. And I think this really gets helpful when you start being in that midlife time and where you're parenting older kids who are making big decisions, and you may even disagree about some things or whatever. But I thought I would just read this little excerpt from Psychology Today. Detachment can best be described as a process of letting go. It allows you to release difficult situations and sometimes difficult people. By detaching from past experiences and future expectations, you can look at your relationships, both personal and professional, more objectively, which gives you greater clarity. Holding on to an idea just because you have become attached to it creates anxiety. Once you detach from the desired outcome, you can stop worrying about it. The truth is that most attachment is about control, and control is an illusion. So it's better to get on with your life, even when you don't get exactly what you want. So, there's just this awesome term which kind of describes a state of mind and how we can do a better job of kind of just detaching from some of the things that may be really hard. So the way I like to see it is I can either get on the roller coaster and ride around and be stressed about my lack of control on the roller coaster, about how I'm feeling on the roller coaster and just spinning, or I can not be on the roller coaster, watch the roller coaster happening, but then be, objective, stable, calm on the platform.
Yeah. It's almost as if do what only you can do applies to that as well. Like you're recognizing this is the area where I have control and I'm going to let go of the rest. It's whatever word you emphasize within that phrase. But it has a different emphasis if you think of it that way. But it's kind of the same idea of I can't control how other people respond to me. I can't control how people talk to each other out in the world or decisions that are being made. I can control this though. So it's really, yeah, boy, busy moms, we love you. And we want you to know that we're on your team. We're on your side, that God loves you. He is for you. He is with you. And my favorite thing the last year is to remind people, no matter where you go, God is already waiting there for you. He's with you as you cross that threshold, that open door, if you will. And he remains behind the places you've left. So if you're worried about letting go of a relationship or a commitment or a place, to know that he remains and he's got it. He's still covering in that place. So even like the elementary school for me, part of my freedom of walking away is knowing God is there. He's working. I don't know all the ways that he's working, but I can feel confident that he is. and I can go into my next space, not carrying that burden of responsibility of, if I leave, then everything's going to fall apart. So that's my word of encouragement as we end.
Yeah. And I think mine is just ask yourself, what do I need today for self-care? And, that could be, I need good nutrition. I need 15 minutes to myself. I need whatever your answer is, allow yourself the space to ask that question. What do I need today? And then take the few minutes of self-care to do that, knowing that will pay dividends, especially as it adds up day after day after day.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, happy fall, everyone. And we would love to hear from you. So be sure to message us on what spoke to you in the Busy Mom's Guide, because we would love to hear.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.